I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that the recent news that's just come out might change the entire future of the Destiny franchise. 40% of Bungie gone since last year. Pete Parsons, CEO of Bungie, demanded to step down by current and former employees. Raids have been shelved. DLCs shortened in the future. Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy, longtime Bungie vets, gone. A rise of video game unions has been shown. And not only am I talking about Destiny 2, I am talking about the IP itself and any future Bungie projects set in its universe. This round of layoffs and the cancellation of Payback implies that the long-term future of the Destiny franchise has been totally screwed up due to the ineptitude and greed of upper management at Bungie. Plus, they may have violated the WARN Act in the state of Washington. But hey, at least Pete Parsons got his cars, right? I'm guessing most of you have already heard about the news, so I won't waste too much time rehashing what's already been said. Little over 20 hours ago, at the time of writing this video, Pete Parsons, CEO of Bungie, shared a post on Bungie.net outlining the future of Bungie and, I quote, some of the most difficult changes they've ever had to make as a studio. Bungie had eliminated over 220 roles just in a snap of a finger. As stated in this post, that is roughly 17% of their workforce, almost 1 in 5 people. For every person that's still working at Bungie, they have nobody around them to help them out. But again, the number is even larger as Bungie has, since the first round of layoffs, dissolved 40% of its workforce. This comes during an unprecedented spate of layoffs across the whole gaming industry, and the consequences of this decision have already surfaced. We've witnessed the emergence of waves of criticism directed at Parsons and the rest of Bungie leadership, with former employees, community members, and other people within the industry all weighing in. Some of the layoffs have affected some of the most talented people at Bungie. Now, you've probably seen it on Twitter or read the article or seen a video from Aztecross or anything else. But in my book, spending over $2 million on cars while some of your employees struggle to pay their weekly groceries and bragging about the same cars in the lobby of the Bungie building to employees and being unable to look them in the eye when they told you they weren't making enough money is not a good look at all. Tweets like, Pete Parsons needs to step down, C-suite taking accountability for any of this, or still just withholding bonuses and it'll be settled in-house. Poor leadership has crushed one of the greatest developers of all time. Retire, Pete. Coward. You did this. You chose this. I'm already listed as do not work with, and I don't care anymore. You lied to my face. Straight to it. You also invited me to come see your new cars 2 days before you laid me off. 2 fucking days. Leave now. Bungie CEO Pete Parsons' disgraceful leadership in a nutshell. Take accountability and resign. This tweet from Fallout is perhaps the most insightful ones that I've seen so far. He correctly identifies that developers are and always have been incredibly passionate about Destiny 2, and this passion shines through whenever the leaders of the community meet with them. The issue engulfing Bungie lies entirely with upper management and the executive class of workers, who create all of the problems through poor decisions and risky financial decisions, such as choosing to go for the creation of several incubation projects while Destiny 2 is still the only true source of income for the studio until Marathon comes out, and yet are not the ones who take the hit when these decisions backfire. Devs affected by this decision are now a part of the latest layoff statistic in the increasingly insane industry. It has been estimated that there have been over 11,000 layoffs in the gaming industry in just 2024 alone, and we've still got a whole quarter of the year left to get through. So the community is rightfully pissed off, but how have these changes affected Sony and Bungie? And what does the future of Destiny actually look like? I want to focus on how we got here a bit first, but we have to cover the most insane news to come out of this whole saga recently. As a result of the recent layoffs, it has been suggested that Bungie has canceled Project Payback, the mysterious project that was rumored to be Destiny 3, and will be massively downsizing Destiny 2's future drops. Not much has been known about Payback, apart from the vague idea that it existed and was being worked on, but earlier today, credible gaming industry insider Jeff Grubb argued that Project Payback had been affected by the layoffs that hit the 220 Bungie employees not long ago, stating that what is going on the shelf is Payback. This is what was also leaked and reported may be Destiny 3, technically not Destiny 3. Internally, they would refer to it as the next Destiny. I don't know if the distinction is there, but they think the distinction is there. But that is going on the shelf indefinitely according to people that I've talked to. Either way, let's be clear, a Destiny 3 or the next Destiny is not the thing they are going to be coming out of this looking toward, let alone working on in any real way. Of course, this isn't the immediate end of Destiny. There are some caveats. Destiny is still currently Bungie's only franchise that is actually making them any money, at least until Marathon comes out. And we've already got a lot of content lined up that will last a few more years, most likely. As for the long-term future of the franchise though, right now we have no idea. The original Marathon was released in 1994, and fans of the franchise are only getting another Marathon game in 2025, or even longer depending on how long it takes now with all the layoffs. Do you think that even the most diehard Destiny fan will still be ready to pick up the franchise after 30 years? There is evidence to suggest that Bungie will use Destiny as a cash source until Marathon releases, and then exclusively focus on Marathon content until they can release their new sci-fi action game that Pete Parsons teased in the Bungie post. This might as well be the end of the long-term Destiny content, and the end of the 10 years of our lives. It's so unbelievably Destiny for the franchise to have the highest of highs immediately followed by the lowest of lows. How did we get here? Well, back in 2023, it was warned by Sony that if Bungie didn't get their stuff together and meet the outrageous sales projections of Lightfall and the final shape, that they would be overtaken by Sony directly. Now, we've seen jobs dissolve directly into Sony, but it still sucks to see, especially when these things could have been avoided by just upper management not being so full of themselves. In tough situations like these, you need your senior leadership to step up and lead. Totally a crazy concept, I know. On the other side of the coin, we see Final Fantasy's game director literally cut his pay by 50% just to retain employees. Now that is how you lead. Now let's cover the final shape. It's one thing to have layoffs because of a subpar product, aka Lightfall, even if it's to blame on higher-ups making bad decisions. It's another thing to help make the best possible expansion that we could have gotten, and lose your job because of it. In March, Bungie replaced the game director of Marathon, and after this happened, a source with knowledge of Bungie's budget told IGN something will need to happen to curb the cost unless the final shape does so well to cover the gap and people can move on to Marathon, referring to fears of another round of layoffs following the final shape's release. And then, the layoffs happened. So the final shape needed to sell unbelievably well in order to allow Bungie to cut down on some of the costs. And it's not like it wasn't selling. Apparently Final Shape was in the top 5 earners of the entire year, beating out even Valorant. Now you already know that there are 220 individuals now without a job during a financial stability crisis in the US, especially living in Seattle. So I think it's important to actually turn this number into a name. This isn't an exhaustive list by any means, but here are some of the people who have been affected by these layoffs. Robert Brooks, who was a senior narrative designer for Bungie. Diana Madeline Boyer, who was a test mercenary. Dr. Hazel Monfortin, who was a senior narrative designer and a doctor. Quan Purng, I hope I said that right, was a narrative lead on the Final Shape. Nadia, or Nadia Audio, worked on the music for Final Shape. The entire player support team was laid off apart from Drew Tucker and Alexandra. Max Nicholas, who was a senior activity designer responsible for things like the Infinite Forest, the procedural generation system, and the Vexcalibur exotic mission. Matt Dowling, who was a former rewards tester. Kelly Bean, who was a former producer at Bungie. Leia, who was a former analyst at Bungie. Daryl Nelson, who was a producer on Marathon, and a former VFX artist at Bungie. Now, of course, these are just a small amount of the names, but it shows the human cost of these decisions. You might have followed some of the people on Twitter, you might have interacted with them before, you might have joked with them, laughed with them, told them that they're doing great at what they do. Even wilder, Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy left the company in probable warning that this was all coming. This is just an overall show, to say the very least. Most likely, both of you have worried about the future of Destiny. One as a fan, the other as someone who got to live the dream and make it all come to life. What I'm getting at is that these layoffs aren't painless, necessary reshuffles that all companies have to do. They're heartbreaking, brutal affairs that should be avoided at all costs if it's possible to do that. Now this part is interesting, as the WARN Act makes it clear that Bungie would have had to give employees 60 days notice of layoffs happening to not be in violation. Now Bungie may have potentially given them a severance package instead of notice to waive claims of WARN. Severance isn't required by law in Washington, where Bungie is located, which is an at-will employment state, meaning that they can dismiss an employee for any reason as long as it's legal. Just to add more context to a severance package. Secondly, the severance package may offset WARN, effectively providing pay in lieu of notice. So it's entirely possible that anyone wanting severance has waived their WARN rights, and it's also possible that instead of reporting a WARN to the Washington Department of Labor, Bungie just terminated all employees individually to skirt past the mass layoff requirement. Fun situation all around. I'm sorry to take a break from the regularly scheduled entertainment and fill your feed with a stark reminder that everything to do with the current state of the gaming industry is, well, it's pretty man. If you know people who are game devs, especially the ones who've been affected by these layoffs, reach out and do whatever you can. If you don't know any devs in person, but if you're a Destiny fan, it's probably time to find a new game, at least for a little bit. The show just might be over, and we've gone out on one of the biggest bangs and the most pathetic whimpers of all time in the space of the past 2 months. The Final Shape was a phenomenal expansion that did everything we wanted it to do, but these layoffs are a black mark on the legacy of all of the higher-ups at Bungie, and the community are left wondering, where the hell do we go from here? For me, I'll be covering some past stories of the community and some great expansions that the people of Bungie actually worked on back then. I'll be covering other live service games and keeping you guys updated here. But in short, the industry is the developers are and the fans are but at least Pete Parsons has his cars. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. I hope.